you. Thanks for tapping into some Untapped Keg podcast where we explore different perspectives of sobriety and mental health. I'm RJ Zimmerman, and I'm an alcohol-free life coach, lived experience educator, and a consultant where I work with local businesses in the Hampton Roads area to craft a better non-alcoholic drink menu that's for adults. I'm excited today on this podcast to be joined by Myer, host of Here for the Dads podcast. He's also local to Hampton Roads area and an active member of the military. Thank you for both the podcast and your military service. How are you doing today, Myer?
Not bad at all, man. I'm happy to be here. So happy to be here.
Me too. This is going to be a really great episode. I can feel it, talking about parenting, especially from the dad perspective, obviously, because that's our only perspective. So, Myer, how about a little bit background of yourself and how you started the podcast?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, like you said, Myer Craw. I've been here in the Hampton Roads area for a little while. I'm actually from Durham, North Carolina, the Bull City is what we affectionately call it. So I used to come up here a lot, man, to Virginia Beach every summer pretty much, and go to the beach and hang out and stuff. Now, with kids, I don't go to the beach as much because we both know that can be the car. We'll just say like the car. It could be a hassle getting ready for the beach, leaving the beach, all that other stuff. But I enjoy being here, and been in the military, graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 2016, played football while I was out there, kind of beating my body up a little bit right now. And now I'm trying to put myself back together along with kids. And during my first tour, I came straight here to Norfolk, spent some time with my wife, who was also in. She got out in, I want to say, maybe 2020 now. And then we went straight to Guam, had a blast there. I didn't even know what to expect. But we're supposed to be there for 3 years. We ended up coming back early because we had a high-risk pregnancy, which were a set of twin boys. Yeah, so we did a year there, came right back here to Norfolk. Kind of been our stumping ground for a little while. Been specializing in force protection and then surface warfare, essentially driving ships. I've just been enjoying myself, man. I've been in this new found journey of like, who am I? Like, what am I doing with my life? Am I happy where I am? Am I just supporting others, or am I actually passionate about, my day-to-day life? And in that, like, I really enjoy being a father. Like, it's been fun. As a kid, I grew up not really having like I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a policeman. Like, I didn't really have that. Even playing football and running track, it was never like, I want to go be pro in that. I just really enjoyed the company of my coaches. I really enjoyed the company of my friends' parents, and kind of seeing them and just watching my parents as well. I just knew I wanted to be a family man. So, and now being a father, I find myself with a little team, not just because they're all boys, but I find myself with a team because they look at you as the leader. Whatever you say goes. Like, they're just following along, no matter if you got the right answer or the wrong answer. They're following along. And now, in doing that, I said, well, how can I help other people the way that I feel like I need help? Because, kind of growing up, nobody just really, I guess guys don't really have that conversation as much about like, being a dad or being a family guy. Everything is about sports or hiding your emotions and a whole lot of other stuff other than being a dad. So now I find myself just sitting down across the table with other guys, other dads, and just talking about what it is being a dad. Talk about the challenges, the good, the bad, and just hash it out. And the best way to do that was a podcast. So I started Here for the Dads podcast, and I've been doing that for, I guess we're on season 2 now, maybe episode 3 or 4. It's been a month or 2, and then enjoying it. I've been watching your podcast. Has been keeping me going and inspiring me. That's why I'm so happy I got a chance to be on here. I was like, man, this guy RJ is he's extremely great at communication. You keep being vulnerable even when you don't have to be, right? You talk about whatever's going in your mind, and you're always inspiring people and helping out. And then, like, you're 100? What episode are you on right now? I don't even know. Like,
This will be 154. So 153 will be Monday, and then the Monday after will be this one, 154.
And that's all I'm thinking about. I was like, I just need to be consistent. Like, this is a guy who's been consistent, and I want to follow in your footsteps. So thank you for having me on here.
I appreciate that. And, a little bit of vulnerability. I'm still working on not like falling into myself when people compliment me. So like I had to catch myself for a moment because I was about to disappear and not listen to that. So I appreciate all those kind words. And um, I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I noticed that you used a curse word already on here, and especially when it comes to men and saying help and help that I need. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate your entire story that um, you just shared, and obviously the kind words that you said. When it comes to starting that conversation and emotions, like I need help, and we hide our emotions, right? Like conversations that men have. And I laugh at that now when I look because it's like, what conversations did I really have if it wasn't about the Packers or, like you said, sports or anything? It really wasn't much. And didn't think about college, didn't think about the future, all of that good stuff. When you were thinking about the help that you needed and then the conversations you wanted to have, how did that conversation like that start in your own head? And did you bounce those ideas off of, your wife first, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I think I bounced it off of my wife. I think now the world is starting to have a little bit more conversation about mental health. Like we're realizing that there's a real problem and that we need to figure out what it is that we need to talk to people, we need community. And you think about like right after the pandemic, everybody was just searching for a way to do that. Like we couldn't just be in the house. You had everybody kind of starting on getting on socials more, a little bit more podcasts kind of being formed. And during this time being in the military, I was completely like pushed out, way out and going. A lot was different for me and I was being challenged a lot, even in my parenting style and what I was doing, who I was speaking to, and I was still going out to see a whole lot as well. So I wasn't even getting a chance to spend a lot with my family, at least a lot of time with my family. And I found myself like getting into some dark places. And I'm just being honest. And even the friends that I did have that would, reach out and try to talk to me and catch up every once in a while, I found myself just not even having the energy to speak to them. And I knew that if I continued down that road, excuse me, that I was gonna, I don't know I don't know what I was gonna do. To be honest, I don't know what I was gonna do. I was gonna break down and I wasn't gonna be able to support my family. I wasn't gonna be able to support myself. So I had to figure out a way to say, hey, what is something that I'm good at? I am good at talking to people. Like I don't have to know you from anywhere and I can just have a conversation with you in the grocery store or whatever. So I said, how can I take something that I'm already good at, that I feel comfortable with, and help myself? Like I need help. Maybe starting with helping myself first will allow me to feel more comfortable asking others.
Mm.
So I talked to my wife and she said, yeah, you're so good at it. Like, you ever thought about like doing like a podcast? So it was pretty much her idea. You ever thought about doing a podcast or anything like that? I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like I was a little afraid of it. During this time, even if you go back and look at my Instagram, I was so insecure about everything. And I hadn't even realized it. I wouldn't even post a picture of my face. Like I was insecure about my weight. I was insecure about the way I spoke. I was insecure about a lot of stuff. So the only things I even reposted were pictures of my kids, my wife, not even really things of what I was doing. So I said, well, maybe my wife's challenging me a little bit. Maybe this is the first way that I can step out and force myself to do something a little bit different that would allow me to help myself. So I went with it. We came back, decided I was going to do a podcast on something that I was good at, speaking to people, and something that I was already doing, which was being a father. And honestly, in doing that, sitting across from people, just having a conversation has been therapy in itself. Like it really, really helps me a lot. And and now my sister, she's also a family and marriage therapist. She reached out to me and said, "Hey, you should also go get some professional help." I said, "Okay, okay, I'll do that too. I'll make sure that
Thanks,
that I'm."
sis.
Yeah, thanks, sis. So I've actually reached out and I decided to do that too. But when I think back now, like how hard it was for me to just ask for help, it shouldn't have been that hard. Like I don't I we have people that are around us who say that they're willing to help and that they're always going to be here for us. And most of the time it's true. Like they may genuinely mean it. But a lot of times I think as men, we focus on, giving so much, on protecting our families, providing for our families, doing things for other people, going to work, like everything is output that sometimes you don't want to ask somebody to input something into you. Like you're so afraid to ask for that help. Because you're gonna maybe look weak to yourself or to somebody else who you're trying to actually look strong to, and you're not willing to give that up, and that was hard. That was hard.
Absolutely. That is, as somebody who has also been in therapy for a while, um, it's helpful. It is hard to take that first step, and it's hard the first, God, 6 sessions where you don't really know what to talk about, like what is, kind of just throwing stuff out there and seeing where it goes. But man, to like you said it, I think the thing that as men that we're taught through society, it's not even necessarily like outwardly spoken to us, but we're only worth what we provide, right?
Ooh,
And
ooh.
that is like something that I remember going before I had kids, before I was a dad, even before got married. I was not going to get married. You didn't have to be married to have a great relationship. You F the societal norms, we can swear on this podcast. So fuck the
Oh, okay,
societal
good, good.
norms, right?
Cool. I'm a
Like,
sailor, so I don't do it at home, so I
well,
guess
it's
I can.
blue collar worker, man. I mean,
All right, got you.
I'll be right there with you. But I fell into that trap too of my worth is only what I can provide. And if I can't provide, then I'm worth nothing. And I have to prove my worth to legitimately everybody, is what I got stuck into. And that digging that up was really difficult for me and working on it. But now that, the podcast has helped me find words for a lot of things, and what I've discovered about myself the past coming up on 4 years now, it's like the change and the person that you see is so completely different from even where I started the podcast. It's when I think about those first few episodes, it's unreal how the vocabulary I didn't have and where I was starting from compared to where I'm at now. And you talked about how the talking to someone is therapy, for you. What is something that has surprised you that came out of an episode that you learned about yourself?
I would say maybe like how I've been surprised at how vulnerable I'm actually willing to get. I think a lot of times some of the things that you thought you never say out loud is only because you were too afraid to even start the conversation. So I
Mm,
found myself getting in conversation with a lot of these guys, even maybe the conversations happen before we even hit record or happening after or during. But I realize now when the purpose is, hey, let's build a relationship, not surface level. Let's actually like talk to each other about what we're actually dealing with and all the other stuff. I've been surprised at the things that actually will come out of my mouth. Like actually talk about, problems I'm having, or challenges I'm having with my kid who was having seizures and how I actually felt in the hospital room. Problems with maybe feeling jealous of the kids now that they have mom all to themselves. And when I get home, I don't get a piece of mom or, less sex in the bedroom. Now having 4 kids in and out or just different challenges that I thought I'd never actually talk about, or even talk about some of my weaknesses, or just how open up to you about being insecure. I've never said that out loud before, but I know what we're here to do. I know that you're willing to hear me out, and I'm not afraid to start the conversation. So now that I'm not afraid, it's like, what else am I waiting for? Like, just it's let it all out, and I'm gonna heal from it because I'm doing that. So that's I'll probably say one of the things that's been the most like surprising to me. And the other thing that you said about like finding the words, I think a lot of times, even at home, I could be speaking to my wife and she realizes something is wrong with me, and I realize something is wrong with me. And I don't know what it is. Like, I know what it is. I kind of like feel it maybe between us two, but I don't know
mhm.
how to say it. And if I do know maybe how I want to say it, it's not going to sound good. Like, it's going to come out really rough, really butched. Um, and I'm probably not going to speak to her for like a week, and that's not something that I want to do. Or even when I'm trying to speak to my son, there's something I want to explain to him, but it's not gonna come out good. She's not gonna understand it. I don't know how to break it down. So now as I'm having these conversations and sitting across from people, I'm finding the words and it's starting to get a little bit better. And I thought maybe, I need to get a little maybe an app and work on my vocabulary, or maybe, I need to read a couple more books to figure this out. Those things help. They really do help. But there are other ways as well, as you're talking about, your feelings and emotions and stuff. Probably more curse words there because guys don't normally like to talk about that. I mean, but like you said too, as soon as you said you realize sometimes how surface level your relationship with some people are, or some guys are, because guys usually do that. We can go to a cookout and talk to somebody we never even met before for maybe 2 hours and don't even know their name, but it's going to be about the Packers. It's going to be about, the grill and stuff like that, even if we know them or don't know them. But going that second level and getting a little bit deeper is what helps you the most.
Absolutely. And that's something that I just learned this year that I've been missing is that connection and connecting with people, like yourself, but it had to start with connecting with myself. And when I didn't have the words, I couldn't even understand. Like I just thought I had anger. And
Hmm.
then I started to learn, oh, there's frustration. Even when I'm not doing something, there's still frustration. There's annoyance. There's so many different things that come in. And it might be from 2 days ago. It might be from something in the future that I know is coming up. And that's actually what I'm feeling. It's not necessarily just straight anger. And that has helped me to really understand kind of where I'm at. And it's helped me find patience with my kids that
Ooh,
I
yeah.
didn't know was there.
I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day with a young lady, and I forget her name, but you were talking about basically how, like, a lot of times guys, we understand like the surface level emotions is angry, happy, sad, and we just go there and we don't internalize the other ones so that we can break them down and really understand where we are in life. Breaking those down does give us a whole lot more to pour out. And like you talking about with your kids, like it gives you that patience. It doesn't always come easy to everybody. And I needed that same thing too. Where do you
Yeah.
feel like you were able to like learn the difference between those different emotions and where you were, that it wasn't just anger, that it wasn't just those, like it was annoyance, it was frustration.
Um, it actually started through the podcast. And when I started, so for a while we streamed on Twitch, the episodes live, and then we posted them to audio. And somebody came in who has been on the podcast and is a good friend. It's Jenny. So she's Jenny Fur on Twitch, and she has a show called Breakfast and Feelings.
Mm,
And she was giving me and my brother-in-law crap because I used to have to do the episode with my brother or the podcast with my brother-in-law. Because all we were saying was, I feel great. This is exciting. Like, good. This is so good.
yeah.
And she's like, we need to get you guys some different words to use besides those same three. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no more words that we need. This is it. So that started. And then I had Amanda White on, who is I think she's an LPC, she's a therapist. She talked about like sobriety, and a lot of times when you're starting to go sober, like you have to name your emotions because now you have to feel them, and that's scary. So she talked about different processes to be able to understand and name them. And then what took it over the top for me to be able to actually break them down was Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, which is a book and it's a show on HBO. I recommend both. They're both
Right.
amazing in their own right. The book, I think, needs to be in seventh and eighth grade and like junior in high school. Like you should be going over that as a child when you are, because those are the times where you're going through the most changes, where you're feeling your emotions for the first time, where
Yep.
you can get the nuances. And in the book, she breaks down like, let's say it's like 84 emotions and experiences. And that reading that book and then how she breaks it down, and she uses, in every person's kind of language that's easy to grasp, that can really help you break some things down. And that completely changed my internal dialogue. And once I was able to change my internal dialogue, that helped me being able to have more conversations and find courage to have conversations that I didn't know I wanted to have, and connections, create those connections. So that's kind of that's the journey that was probably 2.5 years that it took. But I think the level that you're willing to open up is how quickly you can move on the journey. And I remember when I was going to become a dad, I knew that the way that I wanted to be a dad, what I was going to do, which was the opposite of how I felt probably from my parents ever, is I'm going to respect my kids' intelligence.
Mm,
And then everything has kind of started from there and then gone gone out from that point. And I've since learned, like, it's kind of, what is that called, gentle parenting, or it's
yeah.
kind of how I've the philosophy that I ended up taking without even realizing it, but that was where I started. When you were becoming a dad, was there anything that you wanted to take and, like, start with?
Uh, I think so. I think definitely. I think my own philosophy in life is to start with love. Like that's
Ooh,
essentially how I do everything. And you can ask pretty much anybody who's gone to school with me, and I don't think I've ever really put it into words until maybe only a couple months ago when I was talking to my son. But everything I try to do, I try to start with love. Even trying to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, or how I'm working, or the relationships that I have with people. No matter if it's gonna be a good one or a bad one, you hear about the good, bad, good sandwiches when having conversations with people. But it's to start with love. So I was like, okay. No matter what I'm doing, when I'm raising my kids, I hope that I start with love in every part of it. Like, no matter if he's doing something that I don't agree with, no matter if he's taking a road that is a little bit different than mine. Because, as playing sports, you're like, these are the things that I have in my toolbox that I got
yeah.
along the way. The easiest way for me to know that you're going to get them is for you to do the same thing. And I realized very quickly, in speaking to some other dads, that that doesn't always pan out. Right. So if he says he doesn't want to do sports at all, what am I supposed to do? Like now I feel like I don't have the answer. But if I were to start with love by realizing, hey, I love you, no matter what you want to do, we're going to figure it out together. Now I'm going to, like, do what you said, respect his intelligence, have a conversation with him instead of trying to make him into this person that I want him to be. Slow down and realize that the person that he's becoming already. And then I'm going to be able to help raise him. And I feel like you have to do that a little more gently. Like it's gonna have to be a little, maybe even a hybrid of gentle parenting. I'm kind of an old country boy, so sometimes the traditional old country boy ways kind of come out and how I want to raise them, things I might say to them and do to them. But I love that you said respect their intelligence because the kids know, like they really do get it. They might not have the answers to everything, but they always ask because they want it and they know to ask. They might not know how to put things in words, but they got it in their head. And if we think that they don't, we wouldn't be 30, 40, 50-year-old men talking about what happened to us when we were kids because our parents didn't realize that we already understood what was going on. So
Yeah.
if I respect that a little bit more and just talk to them, hey man, I'm sorry I yelled at you this morning before we went to church. I realized that we were late. It was frustrating me because we're always late. I wanted to be on time. Your mom already yelled at me about this or that. And I just wanted us to be on time for once. I didn't know how to communicate with you that we were going to be late and that I want you to move a little bit faster. So I raised my voice. That's something I don't want to do. I don't want to make you sad. I don't want to, upset you before we go to church or any other time. But I want you to know that daddy's sorry, that I'm going to look for another way to help you understand that so we can be on the same team. It goes, oh, okay. Yes, daddy. I won't be late anymore. I'm gonna put my shoes on Sonic fast. I'm just like, oh, what just happened? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, so respecting their intelligence definitely helps, and I try to start with love.
man. I resonated and loved everything that you said there. And that's something that I think we take for granted as dads, sometimes, or parents in general, apologizing for your mistakes, like owning up to it. that I do the same thing. Like I'll lose my patience. I don't have infinite patience. Nobody does. I'm a human being,
Either.
right? So I'll get frustrated, and there'll be like 10 minutes where I'm raising my voice too, and they've both told me they don't like it when I raise my voice. And sometimes though, it's like we got to get moving. And then when we get to the vehicle, I'm like, you know what? I raised my voice and we were late because I got sucked into something that I should have had taken care of earlier. That it's not your guys' fault. It's daddy's sorry that I did that. And I'll try to do better going forward. I still have things that I need to learn. And
Yeah.
like that goes so far
Oh
to
man.
allow them to realize that it's okay to make mistakes.
And what they get from it too, I realize is like when you apologize, because I feel like when I apologize, it's me telling them that daddy's gonna be perfect from now, that I'm not gonna do it again. But that's not really what they're learning. What they're learning is like, daddy apologized. He saw what I saw. So it's not, I'm not in it alone. Like he's not just yelling at me and I think that I'm all wrong or whatever. He apologized. He saw what I saw. And now, as you continue to apologize for when you do wrong and something that you're gonna do better, they realize that hey, people do make mistakes. So when it does happen, he can look at dad or look at mom and go, okay, he's having one of those moments. You know what I'm saying? I can respect that. He usually does this right. He's not doing it right today. I have mistakes. I do those same things sometimes. And you're like now creating this person who is can navigate in the world and see other people's perspectives and understand. And it's hard in a moment to realize that. And as parents, we don't. I think my parents didn't apologize as much. You know, maybe that was something that they learned, or they just didn't know how, or didn't respect. A child's intelligence because as parents, this is kind of like the first time you're ever doing it, right? You didn't
Oh
take
yeah.
a class in high school or college or anything like that. So you're doing it for the first time. But as I'm getting older and now having kids, I'm starting to forgive my parents for some of the moments that we had, and I'm starting to understand like, hey, this is their first time. Like I told my son that finally the other day. I was like, hey, you're my oldest. Like I've never done this before. He's oh, you never been a daddy before? Like this, like no, this is my job, but this is not my career. You know what I mean? And maybe that gives them some perspective.
It does. And they, like you said earlier, like they understand more than we might give them credit for. Um, yeah, it's when you have that understanding, like, oh, my parents don't know what they're doing either.
Yeah,
Uh, that person at work that I think has everything together doesn't know what they're doing either. We're all just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
that's it. Like that's literally how we're going through life. And they say you gotta fail to get things right. So you can literally be watching somebody succeed through failing. And you're just looking at them like, what are they doing? But they're trying to figure it out the same way you're trying to figure it out. They might be in a different position or different perspective, but it's cool now to talk to him about it and realize he's understanding it. And then now I'm trying to show him his 2-year-old little brother doing the same thing. Like he's like he's not sharing it. He's not doing it. He doesn't know how yet. He's trying to do these things. Like my 2-year-old will literally go up to my 5-year-old and have a blue Pokemon and I mean I don't know how they even got these, but they got a blue and a red Pokemon. Hey, which one do you want? My son will say the red one, and he'll keep the red instead because he's learning how to share. He doesn't realize that. And my 5-year-old's kind of like learning in real time from different angles and perspectives. Like everybody's making mistakes and failing and trying to succeed and stuff like that. And it's cool to watch. But it's not always easy being in that position though. Like
Mm,
talked about a little bit, just like releasing that and telling your feelings, to apologize, to know that they don't have all the answers and that they're not doing everything the way you want to. It's not easy being on this side, like at all.
not at all. Not at all. And then to try to explain things that we take for granted to children that have no context. And you're like, how do you not understand? Oh, wait, I never taught you this before. How do
Yeah,
you explain that?
it's so hard. And they will ask you like, "What does maybe mean?" And you're like,
Oh,
"Huh?
yes. I recently just got that one.
Oh my gosh!" Like, and you take it for granted all the time. You think, like you said,
Hmm.
you just take it for granted. It could be something as big as like death. It could be
Yep.
something as big as like magic on TV. I think we were watching Marvel. the other day, and usually we try to do a lot of animated and cartoons. This is just what they can pay attention to a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Anytime there's like a real person on TV, he could care less, unless it's a Marvel character. If it's Spider-Man, if it's Thor, if it's any of those guys, he can pay attention. So we're watching it, and I want to say it was like WandaVision or something like that. And sorry if you haven't seen it or anybody who's watching who hasn't seen it, but I'll just kind of I don't want to mess it
It's
up
been
too
out
much.
for like 2 years. I think it's
Yeah, they should
okay.
be able to get this right. So this was the end of it, and she was kind of like taking down this world that she created,
Hmm.
and he started crying like on the seat right next to me. I'm like, baby, what's wrong? He's like, what if that happens to our world? I'm like, okay. So now how am I supposed to break this all down? So here I am trying to have a conversation about our world, why it can't happen. And he was like, but Wanda can still do it. I'm like, well, Wanda's not real. You just see a blank stare. You just like, okay, so now I have to break down what an actor is. So here I am on YouTube looking at actors, trying to show him this and that. And he's like, well, but what about the other superheroes? Oh, those superheroes, this is made up. And it we take it for granted. We take it for granted a lot. And we have to slow down to be able to teach them. And sometimes we don't know until they ask. And it's just not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. It's like, oh, now I'm confused. Wait, what were we? How did you
Yeah,
get
I've
me to
been there.
spin myself in a circle?
That
Uh,
happens.
have you done Blippy at all?
Yes, I've done Blippy. And Blippy kind of, just being honest, it kind of scared me a little bit.
Same.
Um, Like I didn't know anything about Blippi or anything, but just hearing the voice, it was like kind of weird. It kind of gave me what was it like, Mr.
Pee Wee
Back in the day,
Herman.
like Pee Wee Herman kind of vibes. And it was a little scary. Like I still remember watching Pee Wee Herman, and I don't even really know if I remember any episode or anything, but it was creepy. And I
Hmm.
don't know if maybe that was just a way to attach to the kids. And as you watch some of the things that kids watch on YouTube, they kind of use these different voices that are a bit odd, but they're trying to channel the kids in a different way. And they might not all be malicious, but that's what Blippy gave me. And I just kind of looked at my wife. She was like, I don't know, like maybe we should start paying more attention to it. And I see they're trying to like put out good stuff or whatever. It just was a little odd, and I read more into it. And there's some stuff that the kids wouldn't even probably ever find or understand. But I was just like, hey, yo, we're not watching Blippy anymore. But
No.
when they ask, it's like, you would say what Blippi's bad? Like I don't know how to answer the question to that. You know, it's maybe not that he's bad. Like, what about you guys?
So I looked at the videos of Blippy and I was like, this really annoys me. Like that voice just annoyed me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
but I allowed it because I saw how he was teaching. And so both my kids still like Blippy, but not as much. And I was annoyed by how much it was. But at the end of every episode, he spells out his name Blippi. So both my kids learned to spell their name to that same rhythm.
Wow.
And like at 2, my oldest was able to spell his name. Same thing as my youngest. I think my youngest was a little younger, and they were able to pick it up. And like he teaches about construction vehicles. Now
Mhm.
there's like kind of the science aspect. I've been really impressed with how he teaches like the sharing and stuff like that. But yeah, like watching some of the YouTube stuff, I've had to catch, especially my oldest, like, we're not watching this one. Well,
Yeah.
why not? He's not doing, anything bad. And I'm like, there's just some words being used that daddy doesn't like that we're
Yeah.
not gonna watch. And so now I have a rule that like number blocks is something that they watch, which I highly recommend for math.
Yeah. I love it.
Um, Octonauts is great for like underwater creatures, things like that. That's
Mhm.
what we watch at night before bed, so there's no nightmares. It's like we're not watching any real world, no toys,
Because they
just
dream hard or something. Like kids, it's whatever's on the mind right there. That's
yep,
what they go with.
yep. Bluey, Bluey's the best show on TV. Period.
Oh my, I'm so happy. Like Bluey literally blows my mind. Like it's great for kids and it's great for parents. Like especially dads. Like I tell every day, hey, do you
Yes,
watch? I don't say, do your kids watch Bluey? I say, hey, do you watch Bluey? Because Bluey will convict you though. Like watching dad walk around and talk with the kids, and you watch him play and slow down. But he's also very real about like when he gets tired and how he talks to them and building a relationship. Man, it's amazing.
I tell people the same thing. Like it's the best show on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the best show on TV. And we usually use like YouTube Kids. We've subscribed to it and stuff like that. So there's some really good stuff on there. Like I thought you were it was cool that they learned how to like spell their names through watching some of this stuff because I know I'm gonna have an episode at some point like talking about screen time. Like
Hmm.
we live in this culture and era where everybody's talking about screen time and they trying to tell us what's good and what's bad or whatever. But I've watched my kids like grow so much and learn so much from that, like ABCs and stuff before they even get to the
Yeah.
daycare. Because some daycares they don't even teach it. It'll just be to watch your kids, right? Until they really get to school or pre-K. So like to see them learn and to point out, a tractor or I know my son did learn from Blippy. He was talking about basketball and like buoyancy. I'm like, that's
Oh yeah.
amazing. He taught him buoyancy. So yeah, all that stuff is good. Like everybody's got their own thing. You gotta learn how to use your resources because it's not going anywhere. Like think about our screen time. Like we even going to work, like we got it. We just gotta learn how to teach kids in a different way because their life is gonna look completely different than how ours look. We had Game
Yeah.
Boys, Nintendos, those were different. Nobody was screaming about screen time then, but the internet's not going away. So
And that's where I think the harmony comes in, right? Where it's all about understanding your kids and like the balance, and then, trying to implement that into life. Like, yeah, you can't go all one direction. And if you go all the other direction, you might be limiting your kids as well
oh
on
man.
how, like you said, how quick they're learning different things. And that's one thing I need to get better at is reading to my kids, because especially my 5-year old, I need to start reading him books like every day, probably more than one time a day. And I just take for granted, like, I'm got no energy here, take your tablet, go
Uh,
watch something.
It's so hard. Like, and I'm an English major by trade, so like I love reading already. Like me and my wife, we've written two books, and we're actually working on the third.
Oh
So like
dang,
books was
that's
like a
awesome.
thing. Yeah, my wife, her favorite movie is Matilda. Like, if her life could just be Matilda, like she just gets older and she does nothing but read and live out in a little prairie house and be like become a teacher. Like that is what she loves. So like books. She was the first person to take me to the library in college. Like I never even knew we had a library at all. So she was the first person to take me there. Then once we got married and moved out here, and us to the library and the kids learned about books and the library card. I'm like, you telling me you can get all this stuff like rich dad, poor dad for free, like all this stuff. So we started reading to the kids a whole lot more as younger. But as we started having more kids, it started getting harder. Like I'll sit down in the chair to try to read to them, and I'm knocked out after like the first page. Like I'm already like, so that's really hard. But the kids, they do love it. And it's just kind of finding times to do that and try to implement that into like our daily routine. It's not easy, but the kids they love it and they're sponges.
They really are. They really are. Um, yeah, it's unreal. Like, when you realize, because they say something to you, that they're watching every single thing that you do,
Oh
it's
my god.
like, what?
It's, they do it all the time too. Like like I say Big Brother's always watching.
Yeah,
It's like that. Like you don't think the kids are paying attention at all until they bring something up or until they do something and you're like, why are you doing that? It's like, oh, you did this yesterday when you're eating sunflower seeds or something like that. A lot of times I get in trouble because the kids will do something that I already do. My wife doesn't like dropping the socks on the floor or biting your fingernails and not
oh
cleaning up the
boy.
pile and stuff like that. So they and they definitely get it and they pay attention a lot. But I mean, that's their job. Like that, they don't know anything else to do but to just do whatever they see. But for us, how do we? I don't know. We're not supposed to hide it. We still got to be ourselves too. That's kind of hard sometimes too to be yourself and like yourself and make sure that the self that they're learning is the self that you want them to be. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's for somebody who, as it turned out, did not like himself. Like, that is something that, as I'm learning, same thing with the emotions. Like, I want them to have a leg up and learn these things that I wish that I had learned earlier. So trying, especially I see it in my youngest, kind of at that point where their self-worth is starting to that foundation is being built for their self-worth. So
Mm.
how can I make sure that I'm building that to be a lot stronger of a foundation than what I had when I'm still learning how to build
Still
my own foundation?
Still learning. One thing for me, like I talked about being like insecure about just the way you look, and that's something that I was struggling with. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't like trying to pass that down to my son. And I caught myself a couple times, like before he was about to leave the house and go to school. Of course, you want to make sure your kid look nice and all that other stuff. They don't have, boogers falling out their nose and stuff. But I found myself every single morning wearing a little bit too much about his hair, worrying a little bit too much about his socks matching his shirt, worrying a little bit too much about just the way he looked and his appearance and everything. And I realized that the kids at school probably don't care about that. And yeah, I'm gonna be teaching them, nice things about, make sure you keep yourself up and like all the other stuff. But I realized that's not what I was doing. I was insecure about somebody looking at my child and thinking that he looked unkept or that he was coming from this type of house or that the girls won't like him or people don't want to play with him or whatever. And I was pushing that insecurity onto him because after he's gonna think to himself every time he looks in the mirror that something's wrong, that I need to figure out what it is. And I'm not gonna move forward until I figure out what it is. And I don't like what it is, and I don't like myself, and I don't want to do that to him. So now we lean more into affirmations like, hey bro, I really like that hat you picked out. We talked about matching and stuff like that, but I like this. And I try to mix it up a little bit. And I try to not to push that insecurity onto him as I'm trying to get better with my own insecurity.
Yeah. I hear you there because that is like the thing, like everybody always jokes, right? That there are mirrors, like there are biggest mirrors because you'll see something. Where did you learn that? Oh, wait, that's me.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, right? And how so like you can't do that. Well, you do it.
Yes.
Um and daddy's trying not to anymore either.
Yeah. I try to tell him, hey, daddy's trying not to. And he'll do it, or he'll like raise his voice to my 2 year old. My oldest will raise his voice to the 2 year old. No, Avery, you can't have any more apples. And da, da, da. I'm like, yo, stop yelling at him. And he'll just look at me like, where'd you think I learned that from?
Yep.
I'm just like, yeah, I gotta do better. So hey, daddy did it. Sorry, I'm trying to work on it, looking for different ways to like figure it out.
That's
Man,
the same,
I'm
the
so happy
same.
we're talking about this right now. Like, how valuable would it have been to have this conversation before we like had kids or like being a little bit younger to hear a podcast about what you're talking like this? I think we undervalue it sometimes.
Absolutely. And the dad books. Did you read books like You're About to Be a Dad kind of a book
No, I
before?
think somebody talked about getting me one before and I didn't actually get it. So I'm like, no, I just dove in head first without any real like planning or because I try looking up some stuff like on Google every once in a while, like what is my
Yeah.
hospital stay supposed to be like? And sometimes you find some blogs and stuff, but no. Did you read any?
I got one and 10 pages into it, I'm like, this is some bullshit. And I put it down. And it's like,
Did it
but
not feel relatable or like
it did
what?
not. It did not feel relatable at all. And um I think that that's where like the podcast that you have and videos and other shows out there talking about this
Yeah,
being relatable, like understanding um what's out there. Like I didn't realize I knew I wanted to respect my kids' intelligence and I didn't want to continue some of the cycles that um were continued with me. And I didn't realize how easy it was going to be to fall into those cycles
wow,
with the temper, with the, um, you know, just a lot of things that like were blamed on me, but I had no control over. And then I started to almost blame on my kids. And then, luckily their mom was like, hey, did, we can't do that. We can't be doing that. You can't be, and realizing, working on myself, that that was the best thing I could do. And there was a moment where my oldest, he was 2, maybe 3, and we're getting ready to leave. And I think I made him put a jacket on, and he was mad he had to put a jacket on. And he said, "Daddy, you're mean." And I said, "You don't know what mean is. If you want to see mean, I'll show you what mean looks like." And their mom goes, stops and they're like, "Why are you talking that way to a 3-year-old? Are you jealous of the childhood that he has?" And it took
Mm,
me by surprise. And I immediately said, "No, like, why would I be?" And then I thought about it and I'm like, I am. And that's a good thing because that's what I want to do. I want to give them the things that I wasn't given and not, and this is the advice that I give to dads when they're expecting, create a childhood that you are jealous of and not from the presence and not of the physical gifts that you're giving them and not even the travel experiences, but
yeah,
the space that you hold for them emotionally, the presence you give them, which I listened to your episode with your son on there too, and you and Sony, and you were talking about presence over presence, right? And how important that is. And just create a space that you are jealous of because you should be.
yeah,
And that will make you a good parent.
absolutely. And it's hard sometimes to figure out what that looks like, right? You
Yes,
Okay, I don't want to give them the presents because there's definitely things that there's a red bike or the mongoose that I had growing up. Like I want you to have that. Like, yeah, you can still do those things, but what does it
absolutely.
also look like to be present, like in the moment, like really be there? And sometimes the kids will legit tell you and just say, "Hey, come play basketball with me," and you got to go play basketball. Hey, look at this. Hey, watch me do this. Do this with me, or whatever it is. Sometimes you have to stop and do that. And even when you're rejecting whatever that idea is, because we still have life that's going on, we're trying to do things for maybe our other kids or work or whatever. You have to sometimes put yourself in their position. Like you have to remember what it was like for you when you were a child. And if you forget that, if you can't live in that moment one more time or a few more times to remember what it was like for you and a child, you're gonna lose it. You're never gonna be able to really connect. You're never gonna really be able to give them what it is because on the other side, like we just don't get it anymore. We lose all that stuff once we become adults and we forget. So if you want to connect with them and you want to be present and you want to give them the life that you didn't have and a jealous, life that you could be jealous of, you gotta live in that a little bit, like your own childhood again.
Yeah. And it doesn't take all the money that you didn't have growing up. It really is about just changing a few things, and you could look at it and you're like, this is I am jealous of them, and that's amazing. And I am so proud of myself for creating this space for them.
Mm.
Man, that just thinking about that, like, really, it gives me goosebumps inside still. And you start to realize that they teach you just as much as you teach them, and like that's when things really take off, I think, as being a dad, that like you're all of a sudden you're like, this is my favorite thing in the world.
And it sounds corny. It's just like some people who don't understand or might not be in it to say like things like, "Oh, my wife's my best friend," or "Hey, my kid, you teach me more than I teach myself," or "It hurts me more than it hurts, you know, you," or whatever. It's like it sounds corny. It doesn't sound
Mhm.
like it's for real. But you realize that life is really becoming full circle when that happens. Like you've only lived a portion of it, and there's so much for you to learn. And you realize that from the moment that they're born. Like you had the childhood crush, you got the girl that you love. Maybe you got married. Like you've involved yourself and had all these different experiences. You've been hurt before. You got kicked off the team. Like you've had all these different things before. Then a child comes along, and you're like, "What is this? Like I haven't felt hurt like this before. I've never loved like this before." And it's all these different new experiences that you're having. And now you have to create almost a second life to get better at this and to get better with yourself. And it's a whole nother journey. And it's amazing and it's beautiful. And we're still getting better at it. We're still struggling. We're still challenging. We're still failing forward. We're doing all these things alongside our kids. We just want them to know that we're doing it. And I think communicating with them is good. So that we have a relationship when they're older and they're adults. And then they can fail forward and do the same thing for their
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, like, I don't want either of my kids to put me up on a pedestal. So having those conversations, admitting my mistakes, things like that, so they know I'm human. They
Yeah.
don't put me on a pedestal. I'll always be dad. So I'll always have that big look in their eyes, right? Like my friend told me the other day, you know that you're the Hulk to them, right? I'm like, no, I'm not. And then I saw the way my youngest looked at me, and I was like, oh, I might be.
You really are. You
Yeah,
literally could do stuff that they can't.
absolutely. And I think the last thing like to touch on, I heard on a podcast, and the person talking was not a dad yet, about how he thinks like when he becomes a parent, he's going to realize that there's always going to be a last time. So he's going to cherish things because he doesn't know when the last time is going to be. When's the last time your baby's going to sleep on your chest?
Oh,
When's the last time they're going to ask to be picked up? When's the last time they're going to ask to sit on your lap? And like, just be aware as a dad that you don't know when the last time is going to be, and just be in those moments. And you don't have to be every single time. This is not about being perfect, but it is just understanding that there's going to be there's going to be a last time and you're not going to know it. And every single time my kids ask to be picked up, it's a yes. And I just lied because I said every single time and I told them I couldn't yesterday. But I try to make it a yes, unless my hands are completely full and I'm carrying something. But yeah, is that something that
oh,
you took into account, especially with your oldest, or is it something you're learning?
man, it's something that I'm learning. It's something I think I've learned after. And sorry, man, you got me to crying, man. RJ, I didn't think I was gonna be doing that today, but
Please don't apologize for being human.
man, I definitely felt that, and that's what I feel like. That's a big part of this whole thing that I'm doing about like embracing fatherhood because although I'm always gonna be a father, it's gonna look very different in every part of the journey. And the youngest parts, the passion that you have in that moment, you're giving everything to it, and you're receiving as much as you possibly can. And
Mhm.
the more you're present, the more you receive in it. And when you move on to the next level, it's gonna be different, but it's hard to still let go of what that journey looked like before. When
Mm.
they laid on your chest and that's all they wanted to do, and they wanted dad, and it's hey, pick me up, hey, watch this, or hey, can we go do this together? I watched my 5-year-old kinda start stepping out of that, and I watched, like, after enjoying him fall asleep on my chest, now he's starting to walk, so all he wants to do is walk. So I'm putting him down, and he's walking away from me, right? And I got a 2-year-old, so I get to do it again. I got twins. I get to do it again, but I'm not gonna have kids forever. And if I don't enjoy the moment that I'm in and embrace the season, embrace being there with them and doing it, it's gonna be gone. And I won't know when the last time it's gonna be. And they're gonna remember it. And I'm probably gonna remember it too. I just hope that it was something that I could be proud of. And every single last time. And that I actually enjoyed it, that I was actually there, I was actually present. And you saying that, man, it hit me. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you for helping me let that out because that's something that I try to keep in my forefront every day as I'm also parenting them and raising them and spending time. So yeah, that's definitely something that I take into account.
Mm. I f I felt everything that you just said, and that was so well said that I wanna wind down from there because it's such a perfect place to transition. So, Myer, if people wanna keep up with you, how can they keep up with you?
Instagram. Instagram is here for the dads, and it's the number 4. So here for the dads. You can also find me on Spotify, YouTube. You just type in here the number 4, the dads. You can just find my podcast. If you listen to Apple, listen to Spotify, YouTube, like I said, any of those ones. I kind of been dabbling in TikTok a little bit and haven't really figured it out just yet. But if you want to find me, those are a good place to look for me.
That's awesome. Everybody go listen to the Here for the Dads podcast because it's so amazing.
Thank you
And
for watching. You just listened to Here for the Dads podcast with Myer Crawl. I am so grateful that you're here. But if you're new to this space, what I need you to do is slow down and subscribe, share, review, or rate. Whatever you can to help me out because I'm on a journey to create a space for existing fathers and new fathers that's going to allow them to be a little bit more confident and a little bit more efficient at what they're doing. Thank you.